Well, hello my friends. Today is going to be a brief update on the hollowing tool. Will be a test done with two cutters. The one that you saw me making on the original with the gooseneck type and a 10mm cutter, carbide cutter, and I made one other one, straight shaft, with an angle point cutter made from a drill bit. I know what the advantages are on one versus the other. I'm assuming this one for the finishing of the vessel inside is ideal. The other one, on the other hand, for hollowing will be the one to go to. Now there's still one more upgrade that I want to do to that, and I went to Walmart and I picked up an inexpensive pointer laser, and I'm going to configure something out so I can utilize it, because when I'm doing hollow vessels, and especially if the holes start getting that big where I can only put my beginning of my finger on the first part of it and I don't know anything else, it's going to be crucial that I have some sort of a way to measure my wall thickness. Probably could do it with calipers. I don't have calipers either, so for me the easiest way is actually to make a laser rig to go on the top of the arm. Briefly what I want to talk about. Briefly, I want to talk about this arm a little bit. During the making of this, which went pretty well, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. But one thing that is important and it's crucial if you're making one is to make sure that all these holes are exactly perpendicular and parallel, both top and bottom, so it doesn't offset your arm in any way, so everything becomes 90 degrees to each other. And same thing when you get to this joint over here. If it's slightly twisted, this arm will pitch up or down depending on the location of your first arm. So you got to make sure that when you do the holes, you do them all parallel. The other thing is the length of this arm. When I originally made it, I made it 12 inches long. They don't need to be that long. 9-10 inches is more than enough to make the swing out and the reach beyond what you need. So, and by the way, here's the secondary cutter that I made up. It's a 1/2 inch shaft, which is interchangeable by just loosening up this screw over here, pull it out, put the other one in, and I'm good to go, and I can have multiple cutters, multiple cutting bars set up for this type of a setup. I really like this. I think that's a great way. So we're going to be doing a test with the biggest hollow vessel that I've done to date. I got a log here. I don't know the species of the wood, but the log is a little over than what I need, but it's 12 inches, 12.25 inches in length is what I got. A little bit more than that actually. And the diameter of the log is around 8 inches diameter. So what I want to do is I want to make a nice bodied vase, wide bottom, and coming up towards a fairly short neck. The piece is in between centers, and I balanced it up by moving the headstock, or moving the piece on the headstock up, down slightly until I felt that it was pretty well balanced. When I thought that the front looked pretty good as far as where I wanted it to be, I did the same thing with the back, and if it fell down towards the bottom, I would back up the tailstock and raise it up a little bit, put it back in where it was making contact, see where its full weight was, and did that until I got it pretty well. Not 100%, but I feel confident that is as well balanced as I'm going to be able to get it. So the first thing I want to do, because this is going to be the bottom, seeing that I got this shallow part over here, this angle cut, and I want to be already going into the design and not force myself to end up with an 8-inch vase. I'm going to make this the bottom, so I will rough shape this a little bit, make a tenon on this back side, and put it up on my tenon. We'll probably use my 100mm jaws, the big jaws with the super grip. And of course, we'll be using my steady rest as well. So we will see, I'll start it up at about 300 RPM. Or until the lathe starts wobbling. And actually, that's not bad. That's 400 RPM. So I kind of like that. I'm going to take my roughing gouge and go in there and start truing this up a little bit. As I get 100% true, I'll be able to speed it up a little bit. But for now, that's a good speed. this one over here, I think this will do the job. Well, I think I finally have the angle on the cut. It doesn't take a lot of wood, but it is cutting. They decided to go. Also, the other thing that I did, and I haven't even put this one on the lathe yet, on the arm yet, is I took one of these pipes, like the one I use back here, which is a pretty heavy duty galvanized steel. It's got thick walls, and I did a little bushing for it on both ends. And this is to replace just a 1/2 inch going in here. So by doing that, which I have to say I think was a good improvement, and I'll bring the piece back on the lathe to finish it off. So by doing that, I'm able to get a much sturdier bar than this, especially when I'm extended out 10 inches away from the tool rest, 11 inches from the tool rest. It's working well. It really has taken the shock from the arm going up and down with any slight catches that you have or anything like that. Not talking about drastic catches. But it does remove all that movement out of the way. So what I did is, instead of having the full arm over there, by doing this, I can still tighten up the tool where I want it. Actually, I'll shrink it down a little bit so it sits tighter against here. I hadn't measured it when I did this. I just put it up. And the cutter, I cut it down to a shorter length to go right on this end of the pipe. So, and this will be tapped to take a couple of set screws with an Allen set screw. So basically, I will have replacement cutter, mini arm with a set cutter on the end, and this will take a lot more of the abuse. Now it doesn't matter how I put it in here, I can lock it up, and for any offset or anything like that, I can just do it back there and give the arm that slight twist or adjusting it so it's perfectly lined up to the way I want it to cut, or how the head is supposed to cut, whether if it's supposed to be level or offset. Okay, so I'm going in there with the round cutter on this pipe, and I can tell you, this makes all the difference in the world. I can just float it around. I mean, literally, just get it where I want it. Not pressing hard though, you know, just showing something. That's not how you turn. So, well, I must say, not a moment too soon. But here it is. It's the largest hollow vessel that I've done. And it was experimental with the cutting arm. Cutting arm will still need some tweaking so I can get easier down here. It might not actually be the cutting arm. I think I have to make up is a special tool rest. So I can go in there with even my gouge, because my gouge is the best form of getting material out. The arm is good for refining, and of course to come up around what I made it for initially was to do hollow vessels with a small opening, and not necessarily to do things that I can fit my bowl gouge in here. On this particular case, with my bowl gouge that I did use in there quite a bit, I could only reach about halfway before I hit the toolbar, especially with my steady rest on the way, which forced my tool rest to be out further, and therefore it wouldn't allow my gouge to go any further. So there's going to be a little bit of tweaking to be done in the shop so I can do stuff like this, because I do have one thing in mind that I want to do, and I want to do that fairly soon. But anyway, the piece itself is really, it's this starting of spalting that's going through here. I don't know the wood. I believe people said maybe sweet gum, and that might very well be it. But you can see that it turns a lemon yellow when you apply the finish. When you first cut it, it's very white, but the finish brings out a yellowish, a nice yellow tint to it. The wood grain that you see going through here is pretty nice. I mean, it does have a little bit of character to it, not really pronounced. This would have been a blah vase if it didn't have this brown going through it. And I kept a little bit of the bark inclusions, which I normally do. It's almost like my signature piece, but the piece was very well centered on the lathe. So keeping this here, a little bit here, and opposite of each other. So there was no way to balance this off anymore without removing one side or the other. And both halves have the bark inclusion. That's as close as you can get to balancing. And this side and this side both have about the same amount of the brown spalting going through it. There's a slight area over here that didn't have quite as much, but it's not because it was taken off. It could have been that it was a lump on the wood as well, where this part of it protruded out a little bit further, and therefore it might have cut beyond the spalting that it had. It might have. But overall, it's pretty well balanced. The hollowing inside, you can see the spalting going through even on the inside of the hollowing was much more of a task than what I wanted it to be. I have to work on this to make sure that I can get it a little bit easier, because I was getting a little discouraged with this one on how long it was taking me. I know that it was not all turning, but I had 3-4 half-hour sessions, so that means I had at least 2 hours of hollowing up the inside with that arm, which I'm not going to show because it doesn't make sense. It was very tedious just going back and forth. I had to find the sweet spot for the cutter tip on what was cut, what was cutting and not. Finally, I brought it to the grinder and I made a slight adjustment to where I thought it needed, and that finally gave me some pretty good cuts. But it's only 3/16 of an inch, so it's a little over 1/8 of an inch wide. So, you know, to take something that's a foot long, that's a lot of little strips going back and forth. So I have to resort, and I have to make another head that will allow me to go in there, maybe a scrape of some sort, and make a head to go in one of these as well, interchangeable, to be able to do it correct. The way it is, it's a tough going. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week with a much more exciting episode than this one. Take care.